This demonstration is about using the ORAchk utility in your RAC cluster. ORAchk is configured to auto start and run, and you can see that ORAchk actually points to the binaries under Oracle Autonomous Health Framework. So there is a separate document on the Autonomous Health Framework which you can download. So I have the latest version 24.1, and this document provides you information about the EHF and how to download and how to use it. So EHF includes ORAchk, EXAchk, TFA-CTL, that is trace file analyzer. And it allows you to generate a lot of reports which you can upload to Oracle support for diagnostics as well. Along with ORAchk, you should download the latest CVU cluster verification utility. So this is the patch number for my CVU here from January. So when you run ORAchk, you can see that it's configured to run automatically, and it actually points to the version under EHF. So I'm going to run this for best practices checks. If your ORAchk is more than 1 year old, it will give you a warning. It will not allow you to run it. It will also verify the version of the CVU. So first the question is about the cluster stack. Then it will ask me to verify the databases which I want to check. So I'm going to check only one database on this cluster. If my CVU is an older version, it will give me a warning. In this case, I have already upgraded the CVU, so it's not giving me that warning. It just starts running ORAchk in the background. So I'll just show you some of the initial outputs that it shows, and then I'll show you the reports that are generated. It runs ORAchk on both nodes of the cluster, collects both sets of reports, and publishes them together. So here it shows, okay, I'm running on node 1, and the status of all the configuration items on node 1. Then it shows what it's collecting. So this is all the collections it's doing. Then once it starts showing some of the information, I'll go straight away to the reports. At the end, what it does, it generates a zip file with all the reports. So this is where the zip file generates multiple reports. You can open the first HTML file or go into the individual reports. Okay, so here you can see it's giving me information, warning, fail checks, and other things. So this is a small 2-node cluster with not much RAM, so some of the checks for memory and configurations would fail, but they're not critical to me. This one is very critical. If you look at my Oracle block, I'll show you how PDB services are to be configured. So we will look at this PDB services critical warning. So while it's generating this report, I'll go straight to the actual output. So this is the output that was generated earlier. Shows a score of 88 out of 100, shows me how many checks were run, shows me what versions I'm running. The database is running as a RAC database. You can actually run ORAchk on single node environment as well. You can run it without PDB. So this is a RAC container database. You can run it on older versions of Oracle as well. Then here it shows me that this version of ORAchk is valid for 159 days. The actual version I had earlier was much older and it failed to run. So that's why I had to download EHF and reinstall it. So it gives you a warning. Okay, this version is valid for so many days. Then it tells me about the memory as a critical thing. So these are two small nodes, so I've not configured the memory so well. That doesn't matter to me. But yes, I should be using large pages. And the second critical warning is about pluggable databases. So for a pluggable database, you should never use the default service. When you create a PDB, a default service with the same name as the PDB is configured. You should not use that, and you should not use save state. Okay, so save state should also not be used. You should be configuring your own services, custom services for use by the applications and users, and you should not use save state, because save state will interfere with any migrations, upgrades and relocations of the PDB. Okay, so you should discard save state. You should discard your, you should not be using the default PDB service. Okay, so this is a version about, this is about patches. Then it tells me how long each check took. So I'm just looking at some of the checks. For example, this one gives me all the parameters. Then something about the control file settings. So here it says, okay, control file record keep time is set to 7 days, and I do have control file backup on. Here it's telling me about log archive dest. In this case, on this database I have not configured archive log mode, so there is no archive log destination, so this step fails. So this is about the listeners, the network configuration. There's another check about the because it's a RAC cluster, your undo management and your temp table space is also being checked. This check is about the data guard. I do not have data guard configured for this database, so it gives me a warning. This is about faster MTTR target for instance recovery. So similarly, there's a number of other reports you can look at here, and the master report is this one. So let's go back to the screen. So now it's running the data collection. Oh, it has already run the data collection on node 2, and it's generating the output from node 2. So there were output from node 1 and then outputs from node 2. There's also a cluster wide check for CPU contention. In this case there is no load currently, so there's no CPU contention, so the CPU contention check is undetermined, but there's a lot of different warnings for different configuration items. At the end it generates a combined zip file which contains all the reports that I show here, this parent report and the sub reports. So you can look at each one of this manually later and verify what you need to fix, what you need to correct. So this is a very useful utility, but you should remember that you must always download the latest version of the Autonomous Health Framework, which includes the trace file analyzer and ORAchk from this document, and the cluster verification utility should also be upgraded before you run AHF, and there's a document on AHF and all the different components and how to use it. So you can run it. If you don't run it as root, then you can run it as a grid user, but it'll give you a warning that some checks will not be run unless you have SU and a root password. Okay, so this is how ORAchk is done, and it is configured to run in the background, periodically collect information, and it runs from the Autonomous Health Framework installation, which I did just a short while ago. I downloaded the latest AHF and installed it here. So you might want to run, and there are ORAchk options to also run before doing any upgrade. So let me just go to that. Let's see if I can check. Okay, no, this one here. So you can run it before upgrades also. So here is the, for example, you can prepare for upgrades. You can run it to exclude certain checks. There's a lot of different options to ORAchk. The one I just ran was the one for -B option is for best practices. Where's that? -B option will give you for best practices for the ORAchk. Okay, -B here. But you can also run it before your like the CVU can also be run for pre-upgrades as well. You can run it for before you're doing an upgrade. You can run it to run the CVU also. So these are very useful utilities. You should always download them from Oracle support using this document ID and the latest CVU patch. You'll have to look up the CVU patch. This is the version I have here for 21. But this version of TFA and ORAchk will run for all versions of Oracle database. all supported versions, whether it's RAC single node, RAC 1 node, on a large number of different platforms as well. So you can look at this document for the installation instructions, and the documentation tells you you can run on EXAchk, Solaris, and different releases as well. And of course there are terminal releases. Some older versions are not supported anymore, but primarily it's very good on the most new installations are Linux, so it's very good for Linux environments.